Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadankitam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavascha Shri Rupam Sagarajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijanasahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Shri Lalita Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindeshwari Vrishabhanu Devi Pranamami Hari Priye वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणि निर्विशेषाय शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणि जयो श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा Hare Krishna and welcome you all to the online Bhagavad Gita classes of level 2. So today we will be completing the 4 chapters. We will do chapter 4, part 2. Yes. And today is Ekadashi. I hope everyone is following the Ekadashi protocol. So whichever way they can. Yeah. And then try to chant more if possible. So if possible, chant one more round extra. Because Nandita Mataji has sent a message, right, saying that next level needs at least 4 levels of chanting. So can slowly increase, but yeah, I think majority of our class is already doing 4 rounds. So I think that criteria we all meet. It's not an issue, right? Okay. So we'll start. So before we start, let's do a quick recap of what we understood last week, right? So it was about chapter 4, the transcendental knowledge. Anyone remembers anything? So you can actually unmute yourself and then speak.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat.
Yes, Prabhuji. So in chapter 1, it was about, it starts about Krishna explaining about the Parampara system, how he taught the knowledge of Gita to Sun God, Vivaswan, and from Vivaswan come to Manu, from Manu to Ikshwaku, and then it flowed, but in time, this knowledge got destroyed.
Yeah.
So Krishna imparted this knowledge, gave this knowledge again to Arjuna, because here it was important. Arjuna, because Arjuna is a devotee of Krishna. So being a devotee, the knowledge was, Arjuna was getting knowledge again about. Then Arjuna posed a doubt that how come it seems that son is much older than him. So how come he teaches son? Then Krishna reveals that how he remembers all his previous appearances in this world that we cannot. And then it goes to then he talks about his past appearances, like yada yada hi dharmasya glanit bhavati bharata, all those, that every time that my devotees get disturbed, I appear here to to to
Establish dharma.
establish dharma. Correct. Thank you. Yeah, establish dharma again in this material world. So, and then he reveals that if anyone knows about my transcendental nature of my appearance and disappearances, janma karma, then he gets liberated. Those souls gets liberated. So this is how it goes ahead. And then as it moves forward, um, I have to check my notes. If anyone else can add,
Yeah, that's fine. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I think you covered majority of the portion. Yeah. So rest, anyone can unmute and then continue from where Prabhuji left. So he left until Janma Karma Chame Devyam. Yeah. Anyone remembers what were the next? So reciprocation, anyone remembers? I gave the hint also. So the next continuation is reciprocation. So, okay, I'll continue, not an issue. So from there, right, the Lord says that ye yathamam prapadyante, right? Say in whichever form, right? Say we actually surrender to Him, and so could be the Gyanis and then other karmis, and right. So in those, so whatever dependency we show on the Lord, right, the Lord actually reciprocates in the same fashion. And the end is everyone is dependent on the Lord. Could be karmi, could be yogi, could be anything. Yeah. So everyone is dependent on the Lord. So He rewards accordingly. Yeah. And say, the other thing which we touch based is the Chaturvarnyam, right? So the four social orders, yeah, and the Varna and Ashramas, both, right? So they were actually created by the Lord Himself. Based on, anyone knows what was the criteria for
जन्म चतुर्वर्ण मया सिस्टम जन्म कर्म विभाग जन्म एंड कर्म कर्म के हिसाब से आई थिंक
Guna and Karma?
गुण एंड कर्म.
Okay, so that is important. Yeah. Okay, so we covered until then. Yeah, and then we'll continue the rest. Okay, so we'll try to finish this chapter. So rest all we can cover. So we went slow last time because all these slokas were very important, right? So if we skip, then see, we can't actually understand this. Okay, and then even the Lord mentioned, right? So though all these facilities are given by the Lord, and then He facilitates, but He is not affected by it. Yeah. So though the Lord may appear as a friend, as an cowherd boy, and then as a charioteer, but his position always remains the same. That is, he is the supreme personality of Godhead. Yeah. So next, we'll try to understand the chapter further. So wherein we'll understand the action, right? The action and reactions of work. Yeah. So that we will discuss. Yeah. And then post that we'll actually discuss the spiritual qualities, yeah, or the qualities of working in transcendence. So there are a couple of verses there, and then followed by how we can actually uh, surrender to the spiritual master, yeah, who is a self-realized person. So who can show us the path, and then what happens when we actually surrender to such a soul? Okay, and at the end, this chapter will be wrapped up. Okay. So, and then what happens for the faithful ones, the ones who have faith, and the ones who do not have faith? Yeah. So all those things would be covered. No. Can you all let me know if this PPT is visible, legible, or do you want
Yes,
me?
Prabhuji, it is visible.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Wherever you have any problems, then just let me know. So this is what we'll cover today. So Now we'll try to understand the actions. Yeah. So in this, right? So what is action, what is inaction, and what is forbidden action? Okay. Akarma, yeah, vikarma, and karma. Okay. These are the three things which we'll try to understand now. Okay. So does anyone know what is karma?
Actions,
Okay. So what?
activities that we have been doing since all the lifetimes, everyday activities. So yeah, good and bad.
Hmm,
Actions according to scriptural
yeah.
instructions.
Yeah. I think it's more apt to say that actions as following the scriptures. Okay. So that is karma. Okay. And vikarma is forbidden actions. So just opposite of it. Okay. Vikarma. And akarma is so with devotion. Okay. So you perform your activity with devotion. Okay. So keeping Krishna in center, right? That becomes akarma. Okay. Understood, right? So one is karma is nothing but following the scriptures. Okay. Vikarma is opposite of that. So doing whatever you like. You don't follow any shastra, basically atheist. Huh? And akarma is nothing but say performing your activity, keeping Krishna in the center. Yeah. Anyhow, we'll go through them in detail. Yeah. But yeah, initially it will be a little bit confusing, but as you read on, right, the purports and all, so you'll get in. It's not that difficult. So the same thing, right? Karma. So actions which are performed in terms of one's prescribed duties as per the revealed scriptures. Okay. Vikarma is forbidden. For example, meat eating, right? It's forbidden. Intoxication, forbidden. That's vikarma. Okay. Karma is more of say you're engaging into something and then you're expecting the fruit, say, right? So you perform some puja right at home, and then you actually do it with an intent of some results. Yeah? So that is karma. So somebody says, okay, you do this yajna, so then or you do this puja, and then you'll get this benefit. So that is karma. So you're doing it, you're doing the activity, but as per the scripture. But when it comes to akarma, right? So it is keeping Krishna in center, and then here you'll be performing that activity, say whatever is required, right, for the Krishna consciousness thing, right? So you'll be doing that, and you'll be keeping always Krishna in the center. So that is called akarma, which is nothing but wherein one gets free from cycle of birth and death. Okay. So the same thing is being explained in these three verses, right? So in 4.16, 4.17, even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all misfortune. Yeah. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action, and what inaction is. So basically, the same thing. So now in the form of purports, and then in the form of shlokas, and then we'll just go through the gist of the purports which is there. Okay. So in Krishna conscious, right? So what is akarma is nothing but following the leadership. Say whatever our authorized persons or in the disciplic succession, right? Like Narada, all the sages, and all our spiritual masters, right? So whatever they have followed through, right? So we'll have to follow through that. And then these are 12 Mahajanas, right? So Brahma, Shiva, Narada, Manu, Kumaras, Kapila, Prahlad, Bhishma, Sukadev, Goswami, Yamaraj, Janaka, Bali Maharaj are our role models, okay, to whom we should follow. So they followed the path of akarma. So these are 12 Mahajans, okay. And then you may, I think, if you see, right, few of them were brahmacharis and then few of were grihastha. So it is also equally split. So spiritual path is not only meant for brahmacharyas, right? So it is meant for all the varnas. So here you see that there is a mix, right? So there is a mix of brahmacharis and there is a mix of grihastha. Okay. So this is the same thing which was touch based, right? So like this knowledge was being given to sun god and then it came in. Yeah. So only action performed in Krishna consciousness can deliver a person from the entanglement of material existence. Okay. So that's important to know here. And then this is a pictorial thing. So just to make things easy, right? So here is a person who is trying to eat meat, which is vikarma. Yeah. Karmis are nothing but they follow the Vedas. And then they do all activities, pious, right? Punya activities. And then they go to the higher planets like Svargalok. Yeah. And say there, right, until their pious credits are over, right? So they can have a longer time period where they can enjoy better life. But yes, it's not permanent. Again, they'll have to fall down to the material world. Okay. Unless there is someone who gets a devotional tinge over there and then he moves ahead. But majority of the cases would be a fall down. And then akarmis are nothing. This picture is of Narad Muni. Yeah? So who does only devotional service of the Lord. And one who sees inaction in action and action in inaction is intelligent among men. And he is in transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. So here basically, so we can actually think of the sannyasis, right? So who are not actually following the Krishna consciousness process, right? And then who actually are doing artificially or say some kind of at the back end they actually are doing it forcefully. Yeah. For them, right, it becomes very difficult, right? So that is called action in inaction. So they are trying to renounce the work, yeah, but without engagement, which is very difficult, right? So you cannot engage yourself. So completely, say one cannot go and sit in a tree and then renounce all his life, right? So, but if you look, right, if there is a sannyasi in Krishna consciousness, right, he'll be doing all the activities all throughout the day. So he doesn't have time. So renunciation doesn't mean that so we only sit idle. Yeah. So we'll go mad. So it may be good, say, to sit like that for a day or two, right? But you can't continue in that way. Okay. So whereas in Krishna consciousness, right, you have all the devotional process. You from the morning onwards, right? You have chanting, you have classes, you have temple services, you go for preaching. Yeah. There is a lot of things to be done. So that is inaction in action. Okay. So we'll just read through this. A Krishna conscious person is intelligent as though he is engaged in all sorts of activity. He does not enjoy or suffer any effects of work because he does for the pleasure of Krishna. And then his service is to satisfy Krishna. So he doesn't have any effect. Yeah. And then he doesn't look for it also. So he doesn't look for the results also, right? So he's least bothered about what will happen. Yeah. And then he doesn't even care for his own maintenance. Okay. So he's fully dependent on Krishna. Okay. So though we are not at that stage, but there are devotees who actually are fully dependent on Krishna, and then Krishna takes care of it. Yeah. And the graphic example is Srila Prabhupada, right? So when Srila Prabhupada went, he went only depending on Krishna. So he didn't have a big a bank balance, nothing, or he didn't even knew people in US, right? So when he went abroad, he didn't have anything except one or two contacts which were given to him. Apart from that, he didn't have anything. But he went there, and even if you all know, right? So in the ship, right, he did compose a poem, and then in that poem he says that, so you are bringing me to this land, and then whatever you'd like, I do. Yeah. So that is complete dependence, and then Krishna took care of him, right? So and then he created a revolution, so wherein before he left the body, he actually worldwide he opened 100 temples. So he left to the US at the age of 70. Unbelievable. Eh? So he could have also renounced like others, right? He was also in Vrindavan. He could have also renounced his retired life, but no. So he had a mission, yeah, to complete. So that's one thing. And then the further extension of it. Yeah. So one is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. Yeah. So until this sense gratification word is there, right? So it is very difficult. Wherever there is sense gratification, right? If there is a tinge of it, then yeah, Maya will capture us, and then we'll be entangling in this material world. Yeah. Abandoning, the next verse says, abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no furtive action, although engaged in all kinds of activities. Okay. So this is for the sadhaka, right? So slowly, when he does sadhana, right, he actually loses the attachment towards the material things, and then he slowly gets advanced into the spiritual journey. Yeah? So the material attachment, the entanglements which he has in it. So though everything cannot happen right away, right? It takes time, because so we are acquainted to this material world, right? And so spiritual, we have started. The spiritual journey has just started. Yeah. And then we are in the process of purifying ourselves. Yeah? The more we purify, the more we'll be getting closer to the spiritual world. Yeah. So this is the same example, right? Here, this is Sudama and Krishna, wherein he didn't have any, say, sense gratification, or even when he met to Krishna, right? He didn't ask for any opulence, right? So he just met as a devotee. Yeah. So this is action and reaction, right? We just touch paste it, but yeah, it is all written here. So, and then what is the perfect knowledge? So perfect knowledge is that we are the eternal servitors of the Lord. So we are never equal to him. Yeah. So, and so we are the eternal servitors of the Lord. So if one knows this, right? So we are souls, and then Krishna is super soul, and then our job is to satisfy Krishna and not to satisfy our own senses. If this knowledge comes in, right? So we can improve rapidly. So this freedom of bondage of action is possible only through Krishna consciousness. So So this Maya is very dangerous. Yeah. So anywhere, right? So if you give a little tinge or little um, say breather to it, right? So it will actually catch us like anything. Yeah. And then we'll not know. So we'll be fully carried away by it. So wherever there is a chance, right, we should actually always think how can we bring Krishna, or how can we integrate it with Krishna, whatever we do, right? So it depends again upon the place and circumstance, but yes, so we'll have to see how best we can fit in things. Yeah. And these are little advanced devotees. Yeah. So such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship, okay, over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. He who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and failure, is never entangled, although performing actions. Okay. So these are advanced devotees. Yeah. So who don't actually have any sense of proprietorship, or they are not say inclined towards the material designations, right, of life. Yeah. So, and then even they lead the life with bare necessities. Yeah. So they don't need any opulent house. Yeah. And opulent food to be eaten. Yeah. So they just want things which are required for the maintenance of the body. So think of a car. Okay. So if we own a car, right? So for, uh, to work properly, so for the car to work properly, right? So we do some maintenance, right? So we put oil, we do some say yearly checkups, maintenance, and all those things, right? Similarly, very advanced people, very advanced devotees, right? So they are not interested in all the opulences. Yeah. And do you know what this picture signifies and who are they?
The six Goswamis, Prabhuji.
Yes, perfect. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. So
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
these are six Goswamis, okay? And then all are Goswamis, right? Say they were billionaires in their time, okay? So, and then say when they actually decided, right? Say they should take up the devotional service, right? So they were only wearing these two pieces of cloths, yeah? So they didn't have, say, any big houses or nothing. They used to sleep under a tree, okay? And then they used to change the tree also every day, okay, because they didn't want to get attached to a single tree. So that is very advanced. Yeah. And so their life, say we can't, they become mendicants. Yeah. Say they were, say, like billionaires at that time, and they actually, say, each Goswami has their own story, and then they were actually living like a mendicant. Yeah. And they were fully dependent on Krishna. Yeah. So you'll know all these things, say in detail, when you'll read Nectar of Devotion and Nectar of Instructions in the next level, right? So you'll read and then you'll know, say, how the Goswamis actually spend their life, and then yeah, and you'll appreciate things. Yeah, for now, but you should know that they are our Goswamis, and then they all were billionaires, and they left the materialistic life. Yeah. And they became mendicants, and yeah, they didn't have anything for their maintenance. They were not much bothered. They knew that Krishna would maintain for them. So we should not imitate them, yeah, because they are all internal associates of the Lord. Yeah. So they just came here to engage in his pastimes. So we can never imitate them, and then don't do that also. Eh? A Krishna conscious person does not expect good or bad result in his activities. Okay, he knows that he's part and parcel of the Supreme. Yeah, so qualitatively we are a tiny part of the Supreme, but quantitatively we are nothing in front of the Supreme. Okay, these things also we will cover in Bhagavad Gita in coming chapters. So when we'll take up the devotional service, right? So you'll know about that. Yeah. So a Krishna conscious person is always devoid with supreme desire, for he has no desire for personal sense gratification. So whatever he does, right, he does for the Supreme. Okay. And then this is one of the analogy. Yeah? The hand moves, it does not move on its own, but it moves on the endeavor of the body. Okay. So we are only a small portion of the body. Yeah. So this is what we spoke about. And because he's Krishna conscious, right, and then he's totally dependent on Krishna, and then whatever activities he does, it is in relation to Krishna. So he doesn't have any reactions, and then he's immune. Okay. And for maintaining the body and soul, right, he does not require any unfair means of accumulating money. Okay. So if you look in, right, so any Krishna conscious person, right, so he will not do any unfair means for accumulating money. Okay. So because he doesn't need anything for himself, right? So why should he do these all business? Yeah. And then even if you see in the temples and all, right, so ISKCON temples are very opulent. Yeah. And even the Lord's dressings and everything, right? The jewelry, the lighting, everything. Because all the maintenance of the Lord should be opulent, right? So in there, if you see, right, in every temple, it will be very opulent. So even if you compare with the other temples also, right? So ISKCON temples are also built in such a way that it's very opulent. Yeah. So when it comes to Krishna, right, everything is opulent. But when it comes to the own maintenance, right, the Prabhus which they live in the temple and all, right, so they don't spend anything for themselves. They wear a normal dhoti kurta and then that's it. Yeah. Even yeah, you see here, right? So the same thing is mentioned. A Krishna conscious person does not make much endeavor even to maintain his body. Yeah. He is satisfied with the gains which are obtained by obtained of their own accord. Yeah. He neither begs nor borrows. Okay. And then he does not get affected with the duality, Sitoshna or Sukha Dukha. So he's not. He knows that has to be tolerated, right? Lord Krishna said that there will be both, and then we'll have to tolerate. So there is no other go, right? So in the material body, right? So we'll have if Sukha Dukha, Mana, Apman, all these things will be there. But he is what? Equipoised, yeah. So these are all the qualities, yeah. So which one who these are all the transcendental qualities which we are discussing through. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence. This is spiritual. Yeah. So he is not affected by the three modes of nature. Yeah. So he's above the three modes of nature. So we have a chapter of three modes of nature in Bhagavad Gita. So in the upcoming chapters, we'll go through them. Yeah. And then he's above it. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, yeah, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. So, a pure devotee, right, who actually has taken up Krishna consciousness, yeah, and then who's completely in samadhi, right? Uh, for such a devotee, right? So the path is clear. So it's Goloka. Okay, his path is to reach Goloka. Yeah. So that is what here it's been mentioned. Yeah, samadhina. You see. So that's the word which is being mentioned here. Yeah. So a person who is fully absorbed. So by doing the devotional service, right? Who gets into samadhi. Yeah. And then in the coming verses, you'll know once he is into that, say first doing the sadhana and then say giving up all the dualities and then having totally dependent on Krishna. Yeah. And then say whatever endeavor he does, it is only for Krishna. And then he only uses things which are required for his bare maintenance. Yeah. So all these things, when they eventually grow, right? So then he comes into the state of absolute samadhi. So where he thinks only of Krishna 24 hours. Even say our Goswamis, right? Even take from Srila Prabhupada to above, right? Say until Goswamis, I know. Say all from Goswamis to Srila Prabhupada, right? So in our parampara, they all used to sleep only for 2 hours. Because they were writing in books, publishing scriptures, and all those things. And so whatever the time they used to get, right? So they either they used to do the devotional service or write. Yeah? So if you look in, right, Srila Prabhupada was also a great scholar. So even if you open up Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, right? So the diction with which he has written, right, the English diction, so it's very unusual, right? So being in spiritual path, right? So he's a very learned person, yeah, and then he was a great poet also. He used to publish Back to Godhead magazines. Yeah. The unfortunate thing is nobody could recognize in India, and so he had to reach abroad, and then say he got the recognition. Yeah. So and he was very humble. Yeah. So he didn't have when he wrote the first three cantos, right? So when he was in India itself, he finished three cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, first three cantos, and then he didn't have any published this one editors or nothing, or content writer, content evaluators, nothing. He was the one who was doing all in all, and then he was printing Back to Godhead magazine by then, yeah, and he used to go and distribute by himself. So he used to go to the stores and then others hotels or the outlets, the chai outlets, and then he used to ask people to read it. Yeah, so to buy magazines and then to read it. Yeah, so that is how the life is. And even if you take his guru, his spiritual master, right, Saraswati Siddhanta Swami. So he Maharaj, so he was also a great scholar. Yeah, I think in Bengali he used to have so many daily editions. Okay, so he used to have daily editions, and then he wrote books in multiple languages. Yeah, even his father, he is also a great scholar. Yeah, say Bhakti Vinod Swami. So who was the magistrate at that time? Yeah, so he was a magistrate at that time. Say of Bengal, I think. So at that time, right? So he was holding a very big position, and then still he used to write books. He used to do the sadhana. He used to preach. Yeah. So those are all exalted devotees. Yeah. Yeah. Such a person is said to be in. Yeah. This we covered more or less. Yeah. So what happens if we work on our own account, right? And then what happens? There are a couple of examples which we can go through. Which and what happens when we work on God's account? Yeah. So if you look at in the bank, right, we'll have a cashier who actually does a lot of transactions, who actually issues money and then takes money and then he counts it and then he keeps it, right? So he doesn't have any proprietorship of the money in the day-to-day business, right? So he may be collecting some lakhs of money, yeah, but he cannot put 1,000 or a 2,000 note in his pocket saying that, okay, today I have collected all the money, so let me keep a 2,000 note in my pocket. So it's not possible for him. Similarly, if there is a soldier, right? So when say he's on duty, right, and then if he goes and kills the enemy, right, he gets an gallantry award. But when he is retired, if he shoots his neighbor, right, he'll get arrested. Yeah, the same thing. It is given here for Arjuna also. So Arjuna's dharma is to fight the battle on behalf of the Lord. Yeah, and he should not get into this material thing. Yeah. So this is the next thing. Sacrifice leads to transcendental knowledge. Yeah. So these are the different types of sacrifices. So once you are in samadhi, right, whatever you do, right, so these all things come under the sacrifices. So here there are different types of sacrifices or the yajnas which have been told mostly. So this is demigod worships, yeah, devata worship, sacrifice of Brahman. So hearing, and then Ashtanga yoga is covered here, and then charity, yeah, Drav, dravya yajna, and then tapo yajna, yeah, and then study of scriptures and all those things. So all these verses, right? So they actually constitute of these things, yeah. And so here, right? So for Ashtanga yoga, right? So the goal is merging to the absolute. Yeah? So we'll go through them, say one by one. So in this, right, some yogis perfectly worship the demigods. Okay, so they do some fire sacrifice, yeah, and to get some benefits. Okay, and so these are all temporary material happiness. So there is a chart, so wherein you can easily understand these things. Yeah, what an impersonalist does it, right? Impersonalist is always interested in the Brahman. Yeah, Brahman is nothing but the effulgence of the Lord. Yeah, so if you look in, right, so yeah, if you put in on axis, right, say these the impersonalist or the Gyanis will be on zero line. Okay, so in the negative axis it would be karmis, in the positive axis it would be bhaktas. Okay, so this is very dangerous. Yeah, say impersonalist, so the Gyanis they'll be hanging. So it's like neither here nor there. Neither they can enjoy the material life nor they can go and enjoy the higher uh, the spiritual life. Yeah, so it's always hanging for them. So this is the actually sacrifices. Yeah, this actually gives a clear picture. So this flow diagram, right? So this is nothing but karmis. Yeah, so who do sacrifice and then they in turn they believe in many gods. Yeah, say they go for sun god to get beauty, they got go to someone else, they go to Indra for rain, and like this, right? There are different demigods, so, or the devatas where people go and worship and then they expect results here. Impersonalist, they're interested in Brahman. Yeah, they spend all the time in speculation, dry. So here Krishna consciousness, right? So these are the paths, okay, and the comparisons. He sacrifices everything for Krishna satisfaction. Yeah. Yeah, so this is same. And here, right, say the yajnas of brahmacharya, right? Brahmacharyas, what is the yajna for them? So for them is to listen. Okay, so they should engage fully in hearing the Lord's pastimes or glories. Yeah, so his duty is this. And then this is for all the varnashrama dharma, and for grihasthas or the householders, right? They should not have any sense gratification. Yeah, so even after the marriage, right? So they should get married, and then so they should actually beget children to actually bring them in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, so that is the yajna for them. Okay. So this is yoga. In yoga system, so yoga system is nothing but it will allow us to meditate. Yeah. So the different sitting postures and all, right? So in there, they'll actually uh, try to control the airs. Yeah. So there are different types of airs. So and then there are different types of chakras wherein so they actually try to control the airs by which they control the senses. Yeah. So basically we have hatha yoga, and then we have patanjali yoga, right? So the actual essence is to control all those things and then go to samadhi. Yeah. So and so from so that is their ultimate goal, to get into the samadhi or trance. Okay, but not the yoga exercises which we do in day in and day out, right? So that's only to actually make our what do I say, to get some temporary peace, or say to get stress relief. Yeah. But the actual goal is not that. Yeah. So this is, you see, in Patanjali, right? So there are two things, Paragatma and Pratyagatma. So this is detached. So this is the one. So this whole gets detached from enjoyment. Yeah. As long as this whole is attached to sense and enjoyment, it is called Paragatma. So possibly we are doing this and not this. Okay. So and this is what pranavayu, right? So even they actually try to reverse the pranavayu. They they reverse inhaling to exhaling and exhaling to inhaling, and then they practice a lot of things. Yeah. So that's all being discussed here. Okay. Yeah. So if you read, right, and then having done that, right? So this is having accepted strict vows, some become enlightened by sacrificing their possession. Yeah. Few of them sacrifice their possession and performing severe austerities by following this eightfold yoga system. This is Hatha Yoga. Yeah. So, and say some persons, right, sacrifice their possessions. Yeah. And say Dravya, and then these all, and Chaturmasya. So I think currently we are into that, so wherein people actually take vows of actually not sleeping on the bed, and then say basically they live an austere life. Yeah, so not eating all the food items and not shaving also. Yeah, and then I think they'll skip one meal also. So yeah, so here if you read it, some engage themselves in different kinds of mystic yogas. So and then some travel to pilgrimage. Yeah, I think someday we'll have to talk about pilgrimage. So whenever you get a chance in ISKCON to go to a pilgrimage, don't miss it. Yeah. So I can discuss it later on, but not now. Else we can't complete the session. Yeah. But yeah, keep in mind, if anyone is in Mangalore or Mangaluru or near to my Mangalore, Krishnashtami is coming. So if you have time, then plan it. Yeah. So don't miss. So there will be an announcement shortly by Naminister Prabhu. So he'll actually publish the schedule for say Krishnashtami. Yeah. So yeah, and then these are all same thing, breathing restraints, right? I just spoke it. Uh, So we'll go to next. Yeah. So this is the material loop. Yeah. So what is the material loop? Material loop is nothing but ignorance. So out of ignorance, we do sinful things. Yeah. And then sinful things will again bind us into the material world. So whatever sacrifices we do, right, all those should be done with proper knowledge, and there should be a goal. Yeah. So without that, we can't move ahead. And then who gives this all information? So this information you'll get only when we surrender to the spiritual master. Okay. See, all these different types of sacrifices are approved by Vedas, and all of them are born for different types of activities. So this is like all these activities which we perform, right? So there are different types of activities which we spoke just right now, right? Say like someone is doing an Ashtanga yoga, yeah. Someone is doing some other tapa, yeah. Someone is doing some sacrifice, fire sacrifice, yeah. Say like different people, right? So, or say different diseases or differently um, diseased people, right? So they have different tablets or different ways, right? So this is different ways which people actually try to attain uh, the Lord, yeah. But the ultimate thing is we should have the proper goal fixed, yeah. So without that, it is like we are playing football without a goal post, yeah. So you'll never end up, and then you don't know what your destiny is, yeah. And then here the Lord says that, O chastiser of enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than mere sacrifice of material possessions. Yeah? He says that sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than material possessions. After all, O son of Partha, all sacrifice of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. Okay, so this is the essence. Yeah? All sacrifices of work actually culminate into transcendental knowledge. Yeah? So real knowledge is to culminate Krishna consciousness, which is the highest degree. Yeah? So without elevation of knowledge, sacrifices are simply material activities. Okay. So without a goal, right? So it is like you want to do something, right? And then whether it could be that you want to show off to people, relatives, yeah, or it's a status quo, whatever it is. But it will not help us unless we know the actual purpose. Yeah? So sacrifice must be performed with knowledge of the purpose and goal. So this is important. Yeah. So again, he says so the same thing, right? Performed. Oh, chastiser of enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than mere sacrifice of material possession. Yeah. So this is the next section. Yeah. So how do we attain the transcendental knowledge? Okay. So and rest all this is important, yeah, the first one, and rest all it will follow through. Yeah, if we cover the first one, others will be covered. Yeah, so we'll spend 5 minutes on this sloka. Yeah, so this is very important sloka. Okay, this is 4.34. Yeah, tad vidhi pranipatena hariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas so this is the sloka, right? So wherein, so where do you obtain this transcendental knowledge? Yeah. So it is actually detailedly given in the purport also. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Okay. So how do we get this knowledge? Yeah. So we'll have to actually put faith in the spiritual master. Yeah. And then by rendering the service, okay, and hearing submissively from him, right? And inquiring, yeah, then we can actually get this knowledge and then progress, yeah, because the guru, right, so he will give you the jnanam, okay, Upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshina, because he has already seen the truth. Okay, that's the reason he'll impart that. So we'll have to choose the right guru. Okay, the right spiritual master. Okay. So for us, right, our spiritual master is Srila Prabhupada. Okay. So he has laid all the foundation, and then say he has given us books. He has actually created the path, what to follow. Yeah. Everything is there. Okay. So he has given us everything. The only thing is we should have sincere effort to follow the guidelines, the footsteps, whatever he has left for us, right? And majority of the instructions are available in the form of his videos. Yeah. And he has actually imparted his knowledge to his disciples, and then his disciples carry, say, the legacy, right? Say they actually have all the spiritual knowledge which Prabhupada had given them, and then say still there are a few of the direct disciples or the direct initiated disciples of Prabhupada. Yeah. So and they have again actually imparted that knowledge to the next generation. Yeah. And say we are like the grandchildren of Prabhupada. Yeah. So there are a lot of people in between wherein they are trained, and then whom we can approach. Yeah. And then who can guide us. Yeah. So for us, the spiritual master, whenever there is a word of spiritual master, right, it is Prabhupada. And then whom do we inquire now? Because Prabhupada is not there, so we'll need to inquire the Prabhupada's disciples and whom he has authorized. Yeah. So we'll have to ask them. Okay. So it is not that we blindly follow some guru. Yeah. So and then these things have to be followed in the parampara. Okay. So else we don't know, right? So from where, because if you look in, right, in the modern world, right, so everyone says that he got enlightened all of a sudden. Yeah. And then he doesn't have anything, any background or anything. All of a sudden somebody emerges in the YouTube videos, and then and in the social media also, right, someone becomes a god all of a sudden. Yeah. But we should, whenever we want to actually accept anyone as our spiritual master or as a guru, right? So we should actually inquire about the parampara and then all those stuff. Yeah. So if I would suggest that you should read the purport, because if I go through the purport, it will take time. So it has got a lot of information. Yeah. It it's a small purport, but yes, it has got all the necessary information. Yeah. And because they are self-realized, right? So let me just share the purport also, right? So the Lord therefore advises to approach the bona fide spiritual master. Okay. Okay. And then if you see, right, no one can be spiritually realized by manufacturing his own process, as this is the fashion of the foolish pretenders. Okay. So never ever fall in this trap. Okay. And then you should be having a spiritual master who conveys the message of the Lord as it is to the disciples. Okay. Say mental speculations or dry arguments cannot help. Okay. This is one thing. And then how do you approach? So you should fully surrender. Yeah. And without any false prestige. Yeah. So we should not have any false prestige. And then the spiritual master actually reveals. Yeah. And so he, now for us, right, he may reveal in any of the forms, not directly, but we may get in any of the forms. And inquire. So we should inquire. Yeah. And then we should submit. Not only one has to hear submissively from a spiritual master, but one must also get a clear understanding for him. The bona fide spiritual master is by nature very kind to the disciple. Therefore, when the student is submissive and is always ready to render service, the reciprocation of knowledge happens. Yeah, this is how we can actually move ahead in our journey. Yeah, anyone knows what is this picture all about?
Prabhuji, it's about Krishna and Balaram in their spiritual masters, where they're getting spiritual instructions.
Yeah, this is Sandipuni Muni.
Sandipuni.
Yeah. So this is what we covered in, right? So what happens in so in the next couple of slokas, right? So once we are self-realized, right? So what happens, right? So it burns all sinful reactions. Okay, so whatever sinful reactions we have in, right? So all those things will get burned up. Yeah. So these are the rewards of having the transcendental knowledge. Yeah? And so we will cross the miseries of ocean. Yeah. So like we have the material world is like an ocean, and then we cannot swim the ocean. Yeah. So we need some boat, or we need some special mercy. We need a helicopter lift. All those things can happen only if Krishna desires, and then if we have mercy of Krishna. Without that, so nothing is possible. Yeah? This is all the same thing, and so we discussed. This is one who has faith can acquire transcendental knowledge, and one who is free. Okay, and then there are two verses wherein for the faithless people also it's being said, for the faithless persons, right? So they can never get the transcendental knowledge, or they'll never, if we have any doubts, right? So Krishna will not reveal. Yeah. So even there is a verse also, right? So which we covered, and then he says at the end, right? He finishes it off saying that, "Oh Bharata, stand and fight. No sinful reactions can affect one who performs his duties with transcendental knowledge." So he's saying that anyone who is performing his duties, there will be no effect or sins, so which Arjuna was worried about, right? So he says, with knowledge, all doubts born of ignorance. He says, slash, with knowledge, all doubts born of ignorance. Yeah. So here, one who acts in devotional service, renouncing the fruits of his action, yeah, and whose doubts have been destroyed by transcendental knowledge, okay, is situated factually in the self. Thus, he is not bound by the reaction of work. So that is what we have been reading through, right? So basically, Krishna is saying that so you'll not incur any sins by knowing the facts, and that so you are actually fighting for dharma, and under the guidance of Lord Krishna. Yeah. So he's saying that stand and fight. Yeah. So and then he did cover the transcendental knowledge, right? So he's saying that one who knows that there will be no reactions when you are working for the Lord, right? So he gave that knowledge, and then he says to Arjuna to stand and fight. Yeah. So with this, we covered chapter 4. Yeah. So mostly we covered the qualities, and then say how do we get the transcendental knowledge, how does, and then what is the benefit of it, and then what happens to the faithless people. Yeah. So this is what we covered today. Hare Krishna. We'll stop here. If there are any questions, I'll take. So okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you for this class. I have to go to the temple, Prabhuji. So,
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Go ahead. So it's so which place, Prabhu, you are from?
I am from Noida, Prabhuji. So
Okay, okay.
there's a Bhagavata Saptaha going on in the temple. So
Okay. Carry on, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Thank you for attending. Anything anyone wants to clarify? Any doubts? Anything? No? So chant more. So that's the only thing which I can tell you. So today is Ekadashi. So spend time in chanting. So if you have not done so, and then key in your attendance. Yeah. So if you have not done so, yeah. And any questions? I'm just looking at the chat. Nothing. Okay. And then if possible, turn on the videos from tomorrow. Yeah. So we'll end up the class then. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः हरे कृष्ण
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
हरे कृष्ण